Hi, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on the marijuana industry functioning under the Trump administration. My name is Steve Dempsey, and I'm with the Bay Area News Group. And joining the discussion today is Denver Post cannabis reporter Alicia Wallace. Alicia, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Steve, for having me.
Okay, well, we have learned lately that members of the Trump administration are not very thrilled with states like California and Colorado legalizing the recreation use of marijuana. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said such policies open states to violence as well as repercussions from the federal government. And also, the White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said last week that we will see greater enforcement of marijuana. Alicia, for states like Colorado who have legalized recreation use of marijuana, as far as it being legal in Colorado, what do you make of these comments coming from federal government officials?
Well, the one thing to make clear at first is that it's not official policy just yet. These are some of the first statements that we've heard on this issue. I think the statements from Spicer came a little bit as a surprise, just in terms of him addressing that question and that topic. We knew coming into this that Jeff Sessions was not a fan of legalization or recreational cannabis, and so his statements weren't unexpected. But what these statements did is, it's just continued some of the uncertainty around this administration in terms of how they might approach the federal enforcement of the marijuana laws. But then it didn't provide any clarity just yet.
So, do you think it's maybe too early to panic, especially those who are running marijuana businesses?
I would think so, and that's what I've been talking to a lot of policy experts and legal experts, over the past many months, and especially over the past couple of days, and they do all say that yes, you can't just jump on every single one of these statements, or when there's more statements that are made and come out, and think that the world's going to come crashing down, or that everything's going to be fine. There's a lot of people approaching this right now with some cautious optimism.
Well, but don't you think maybe that businesses are probably maybe a little concerned? I mean, it's not like your everyday business. You have the federal law on marijuana, so it's a little different animal here, and at any time something can happen. So I would think that there's probably a little bit of uncertainty there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there's, that uncertainty's been there ever since they got into this, for that very reason you mentioned. I mean, this industry exists in this weird legal illegal limbo, and these operators, some of them know that this could go away, at the drop of a hat. But when I've talked to folks in the past couple of days, some say that they're still getting investment coming in. Others say their investors have grown more cautious. I think it's really tough to say what people might do. I wouldn't be surprised to see some people back out of some operations or sell their businesses. Then I've spoken with others who said they're in this for the long haul. They're going to fight this to the finish.
Now, because I agree with these businesses, being a little worried. I guess the worry began probably after the election, when Donald Trump won, and then Sessions was named Attorney General. So I think that probably started an air of concern, don't you think?
Yeah, I would think that that's true. You had election night was was kind of the best of nights for the marijuana industry in one sense, because eight of nine eight of the 9 states that were passing various legalization measures, those measures were successful in 8 states. And then on the other hand, you have Donald Trump getting elected, and he's been a little bit more reserved in approaching this topic than his counterparts on the Democratic side. And he a lot of people in the industry, they're latching on to some of his statements he made during the when he was on the campaign trail, saying that he's a fan of states' rights. He told a Colorado-based reporter that he would not interfere in the state's recreational laws, and that but then, so I think they were hopeful, they were cautiously optimistic again. But then you have Jeff Sessions getting nominated for Attorney General, and with Sessions being on the record as recent as April 2016, saying that and this quote is, he's not a fan of the legalized recreational marijuana, and trying to get the message out there to people that good people do not smoke marijuana. And so with Sessions nominations, yeah, I think you saw that concern start to ramp up a little bit with Trump, and then with Sessions nomination popped up there, and then with these more recent statements, it's grown a little higher. But again, it's not policy yet, so we so folks in the industry don't really know what yet, if anything, is coming down.
Well, I guess like other issues that we're hearing, the way you walked us through that, there's quite a bit of contradiction going on out there.
Yeah, and it's and this industry is. I've had more than a dozen years covering a wide variety of businesses, and this industry is such a unique animal. It was unique from the start. Nobody knows what to expect, and this isn't any different. But I think it is interesting that this conversation is getting brought up. Perhaps there might be some decision or some efforts on the federal level that we haven't seen addressed in the past. So that'll be interesting to follow.
Yes, it definitely will be interesting, but I'm not sure. Maybe you can educate us a little bit about the setup in Colorado, as far as I'm sure there's businesses there who have like normal business. You've got employees, you have distributors. There's a lot of people involved with it, and those are people who have real jobs. I would think that we're talking about people's livelihoods here. I would think that this would be, no matter what the contradiction or whatever, things were fairly smooth under Barack Obama, but now not so smooth.
Yeah, and you do have, I think some of the most recent estimates in terms of the workforce here is that there's close to, I think this was as of 2015, a little over 18,000 positions that are directly or indirectly employed as part of this sector. But there are others. There's investors. There's property owners. There's a little bit more of a ripple effect as it in terms of who this will touch. But for those people directly employed by this industry, yes, it's a matter of if this doesn't exist or if rates starts coming down, it's not just a matter of them losing their jobs. They could be subject to prosecution or arrest. There's those fears too, and and then you have some of the arguments being made from the consumers, from the patients who the patients who use the medical form of this product. They worry about what that might mean in terms of something that they have found to be suitable to treat some of their ailments. And then from the consumers, they view this, some folks view this as a social justice issue, a freedom issue. And there's other elements, some other arguments that have been made that how this affects the arrests and prosecution of minorities and other individuals. So it's there to a lot of people. There are a lot of things at stake here.
That's for certain. Also, how is Colorado dealing with its own marijuana laws right now, like DUIs and other such issues? I guess another big issue was people growing too much marijuana. So how's the atmosphere there?
It's this is the states are supposed to be the laboratories of democracy, and we're definitely in a experiment mode right now. So everything's under the microscope here, and regulators are very closely watching how this affects public safety, public health. They're trying to track instances of drug driving. They're trying to track hospitalizations and consumption rates among youths and adults, and some of the data that's coming back, and this is the one. There's a key issue about this, is that this is a first of its kind measure. So this is still very young in the process, and the data there, the data are still young too, and there's not that much. But some of the initial results coming back are that they have not seen a spike in teen use. There have not been, unexpected spikes in consumption, hospitalizations. Actually, some of the interesting thing is as they saw some of this initial data come back for emergency room visits, that actually prompted some changes in our edibles regulations to make them more childproof, to make sure that they were not shaped like candy or attractive to children, to try to prevent accidental ingestion. So the state's trying to watch and learn and quickly and adapt as quickly as they can, and this process is still continuing today. I know one issue brought up by Sessions, and this is something that's been brought up by regulators too, is the out-of-state diversion. We had Oklahoma and Nebraska even file a lawsuit against Colorado, criticizing the state and its marijuana laws, saying that there was this huge outflow of illegal product to their states. And so Sessions did mention that issue, and our Attorney General earlier this morning told told public radio, and then one of our reporters, that she thinks perhaps if there is to be any enforcement coming down, perhaps there may be more federal agents put at the borders of these states to stop some of the instances of that.
Well, that's an interesting turn there. But the thing is, it just seems to me the recreational use of marijuana had such momentum going. And now this seems to be a big roadblock right now.
It's especially after election night, you had a lot of industry members saying, look at how many dozens of states now have some form of cannabis legalized, and now you have California legalizing the recreational form of cannabis. They say this is essentially too big to fail, too big to disrupt at this point in time. It's the momentum that's in terms of the adoption of the laws, but then there's also the momentum and the advancement. These industry members argue of public opinion on this topic. The latest poll out suggests that Americans are in more favor of legalized recreational marijuana and legalized medical marijuana than they have been ever in the past. And that same poll, it came out to say just hours before Spicer's comments, but it also mentioned that Americans, that more than 70% of those polled did not want to see federal enforcement of state laws. So all of these, the confluence of all these factors, they're coming together, and industry members are saying, hey, this is too big to fail. This is too big to ignore and too big to tear apart. Some policy experts, they might argue differently, that it is possible for some actions to be taken to at least slow this down. But I think we'll know more here in a matter of weeks or months, possibly.
Yeah. To me, I guess we could be seeing a showdown here, a legal showdown between states, the marijuana industry, and the federal government. I'm sure we could be heading in that direction.
It's possible, but then there's also the where this sits in terms of the priorities of the new administration. Many of the policy experts I've talked to, John Hudak from Brookings, among others, have said of the list of 20 or 100 items or so, they feel like marijuana doesn't rise up above other key issues. The immigration matters, for example, there's arguments that, okay, if they're going to be dedicating all these resources to managing that, where are they going to free up the resources and the funds to also crack down on this? But these experts also note that with this administration, nothing's been predictable.
Well, that's true, but that is a good point, because Trump made immigration really front and center throughout his campaign and after being elected, and marijuana really wasn't a big factor. It was like, well, maybe we'll honor states' rights, or maybe especially medicinal marijuana, we're okay with that. But then again, they didn't want to sign off on the recreational use of marijuana as well, since it's still considered by the federal government as a drug that's illegal. So, but I do agree with you. I think maybe the Trump administration has a pretty full plate coming up here.
Yeah, that's certainly what my sources have been saying, but who knows, in terms of the statements that have been made in the last couple of days, perhaps we'll get a better idea on policy here. I know this administration is still getting settled, so it might take a little bit of time before we know something. But I mean, if you step back a little bit, it's interesting to actually see this be talked about on the federal level. So, and then there's also some activity in Congress as well. The Representatives Polis, Rohrabacher, Blumenauer, and Young have formed the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, where they plan to address a couple dozen marijuana-related bills into the U.S. Congress. And they're saying, and of course they they're the backers of this, but they say that they are feeling some momentum there, more momentum than they have in the past. Whether that's founded or not remains to be seen.
Okay, one last question. Do you
Yeah.
think there's a need for federal law concerning recreational use of marijuana, so that we don't have confusion from state to state, or should we just leave it like it is now and make it states' rights?
Sure. In terms of that, I'll have to defer to what I've personally, I can't make an opinion on this topic, but I would, what I've been told consistently from HUDAC and others is that this limbo, this uncertainty can't last forever. It's not stable. I think there has to be, whether federal law or not. I think so. There's some arguments to be made that needs to be some direction. Out of the Obama administration, there was essentially the Cole memo that gave states a little bit of enforcement guidance and where to prioritize some of those efforts. But I think we may be headed toward a decision. And it's one of those things where like I said, I can't opine on this myself too much, but I would think at some point in time there has to be this conflict resolved between federal and state. How that may happen and when that may happen, I don't know. And I'll be curious to see if there will be some division made between medical and recreational, even though in the eyes of the law and the Controlled Substances Act, they're both medical and recreational. It's still illegal federally.
Okay, well, this sounds like a subject that we're going to be revisiting down the road, I'm sure. So it'll be interesting to see how all this plays out. Alicia Wallace, thank you very much for joining us today from the Denver Post. And that will be the end of our broadcast. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Steve.